Hey, what's up, Musers? This is John at Muse for You, here to help you build awesome websites without code. And I'm really excited to do today's video tutorial. We're going to be creating gradient text and gradient icons. So we're going to be using the graphic styler widget along with a few icons found at graphicburger.com. So it's a really fun effect. With this effect, I'm actually using animated gradients, and you can use animated gradients or just regular gradients for the text. And I'm also using the particles.js widget. There was a recent update, so you can now add up to 5 colors to the particles, whereas before you can only add 1. Now you can add 5 different colors to the particles in the particles.js widget, and I'll go over that in this tutorial as well. So as we can see with this example, the colors are changing because it is an animated gradient, and then I have a transparent icon over a rectangle, a gradient rectangle in the background, and that's how we're able to achieve this effect. So we're going to be using Adobe Illustrator to create the transparent rectangles, and then we're going to be using the graphic styler widget in Adobe Muse and creating a few rectangles and placing the transparent icons over the rectangles. So I'll go ahead and get started. First I'll go to graphicburger.com, and then here you can click on icons to go to the icon section. They have a lot of great icons here that you can use for your projects. The ones that I'm going to use in this example they're called stroke gap icons, and they're a bit lower here, so hopefully they'll show up fairly soon. And yep, they're right here. They're called stroke gap icons, and they are a web font, so you can actually install it into Adobe Muse as a web font and use the icons in Adobe Muse very easily. And I might go over that in this tutorial, but for now I'm just going to download it. So you can click on it, and I'll scroll down here, and you can click on download, and then it'll download, and I'll place it into a folder I have for this example. Okay, so here I have the zip file, so I'm just going to double click. And I'm on a Mac here. With Windows, you probably just need to right click and unzip. And then we have the stroke gap icons web font. So here I'm going to double click, and then we have this fonts folder here. So we'll double click in here. And then here we have 4 different icons. So 4 different files. These are the files that you would need to install it as a web font in Adobe Muse. The first thing you would do is double click on the .ttf. So we have .ttf, .eot, .woff, and .svg. We need to install it on the computer first, so I'll just double click on the .ttf. So I'll double click, and here I'll click on install font, and it'll give me this here. I'll just check this here, right over here, and I'll click on installed checked. Okay, and then it'll install directly into my fonts here. So now I have access to the fonts in Adobe Illustrator, which is actually where I want to create or use the icons. I don't want to use them in Adobe Muse because I'm going to make them transparent first in Illustrator. So maybe at the end of this tutorial, I'll show how to install into Adobe Muse and use them as regular icons. But for now, I want to use them in Adobe Illustrator so I can make those icons transparent. So before I make them transparent, I'll go into Adobe Muse, and we'll just create some gradient rectangles. So here I'm going to go to File, New Site, and I'll click OK, and I'll double click on the home page. And then here I'm going to go into my library panel right over here to the right, and I'm going to type in graphic styler. So here I have the graphic styler widget right in here. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag and place onto my Adobe Muse website. So I'm going to create a few animated rectangles. So to do that, I'll just go to the rectangle tool here to the left, and I'll create a perfect square. Actually, let's do 300 by 300, just like that, and I'll fill it with any color. It can be any color here, so I'll just use this color. And then what I want to do now here is go into the graphic styler widget. I'll open up the widget by clicking on this blue circle, and here we have the widget options. So here we have the graphic style name, and here we'll enter the graphic style code, and if there's keyframes, we're going to enter the keyframe code in here in this keyframe section. All right, so here I'm going to go to the websites tab, and here we have a gradient animator. So I'm going to go ahead and click on there, and then we're going to create some gradients. So I have a few colors. I'm going to open up my notepad and get those colors. Okay, so here I have the colors, and I'm just going to select a few colors here. So I'll go in here, and then here we're going to click on add color, and then just paste in the hex code right in here. So I'll paste and select, and then I'll do that a few more times. I have a few more colors here that I'll add. I'm going to add 3 colors. And there I have 3 colors. Then for the gradient angle, I kind of want it to be at a slant, and the scroll angle as well. And then for the speed, I'm going to change it to about 10 seconds there, or 9 seconds. And then we'll preview, and this is what the gradient looks like. We can kind of see it in the background. The gradient is moving there. And I do go over this in the graphic styler widget. I kind of went over this fairly quickly, but I do have another tutorial on how to use the graphic styler widget if you want to take a look at that as well. Okay, so here I have the animated gradient, so I'm going to copy this code in the background. First I'm going to copy this code here above where it says keyframes, so this first section. And I'm going to go back into Muse, and I'm going to go ahead and paste that code here in the graphic style code. Then because we have keyframes, I'm going to highlight the keyframes right here in the bottom where we can see it says keyframes here, right there. So I'll select all of these down here. I'll hit Command C to copy, go into the graphic styler, and then for the keyframe code, I'll delete that and then paste that code in there. All right, so now we want to apply the graphic style name style1 to this rectangle so that the properties in this widget get applied to this rectangle. So I'll click on the rectangle, and I'll go to the graphic styles panel here to the right, and then I'll create a new graphic style by clicking on this icon here. And then we have a new graphic style that appears here, so I'll double click. And in the graphic style dialog box, I'll call this style1 to match the graphic style name that is in the widget that says graphic style 1. So here we see nothing happens, but if we preview, we go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, we can see that animated gradient has been applied to this square here that we created. So now what we want to do is create a transparent icon. So we're going to place the transparent icon over this rectangle to create the animated gradient effect to the icon. So to do that, we're going to go into Adobe Illustrator, and I'm going to start with a 500 by 500 pixel artboard. So I'm going to go to File, New, and here for the width, I'll enter in 500, and for the height, 500, and I'll click on Create. So here I want to add the icons that were downloaded and installed onto the computer, onto my computer here. So to access those icons, I'm going to go to the text option here in Illustrator, and I'm just going to click, and I'll delete that lorem ipsum text in there. And then for the text option right up here, I'm going to type in stroke, and there we have it, stroke gap icons. So I'll click there, and then in Illustrator, we have the glyphs panel. Similar to Adobe Muse, and if you don't see the glyphs panel, you can go to Window, go to Type right here, and click on Glyphs, and that'll bring up the glyphs panel. So as you can see here, we have all these icons, and we can select any icon here. So for the first one, let's select this light bulb here. So I'll double click, and there I have the icon in Illustrator. So because I know the artboard is 500 by 500, I'm going to make this icon here about 480 by 480. So I'm going to go to the transform option right up here, and for the width, because the height is greater than the width, I'll start with the height, and I'll say 480 pixels, just like that. And then we have this larger icon. And then here in the align options, I'll just align it to the center and vertically align as well, horizontally and vertically align, so that this icon is perfectly within the artboard. Alright, so there we have the icon. We made it larger. So the next thing I want to do is create outlines for this icon. So I'm going to right click, and then here we're going to click on Create Outlines, so that we have the outline. The icon is now outlined and is not just a text icon or a glyph. So the next thing I want to do is create a rectangle behind this icon. So I'll just grab the rectangle tool here, and I want to make the rectangle white. So I'll just set it to white, and then I'll create the rectangle, and I'll right click, arrange, and send to back, so that this icon is on top of the rectangle. So now the next step is fairly simple. You just want to hit Command A to select all, or just drag to highlight all of the elements here in Adobe Illustrator. So here you can either hit Command 8 or go to Object, Compound Path, and click on Make here, just like that. And that's it. So again, I'll undo just to show that you can hit Command 8 to create a compound path, or go to Object, Compound Path, and Make. And just like that, we have a transparent icon. It doesn't look transparent, but if we go to File, Export, or Save for Web, and set it to PNG, we can see we have this white background with a transparent icon there. I do want to save it as a SVG just because I like SVG, scalable vector graphics. They're higher quality, so we'll do that. So I'll go to File, Export, Export As, and here, right down here, we're going to click and select SVG here. And I am going to use the artboard, so it's exactly 500 by 500, and I can resize it smaller if I'd like. So here I'm going to save it in this folder, and I'm going to save this as icon-1. Hit enter. I find 3 decimal places works well. I do want it minified and responsive. So here are the settings I have for that SVG. And then I'll click OK, and just like that we have that icon. So I'll go into Muse, and I'll go into my Finder here, and I'll just click, hold, and drag. Let me go back here. So now we have this icon 1, so I'll just click, hold, and drag and place onto Adobe Muse, and then I'll resize it to the same size as this rectangle here. So I'll click and I'll resize it to 300 by 300 right up here. I'll click enter, and now I have this rectangle, or the square, right over the square in the background. So let me just center this right in there, and I'll preview in the browser just like that, and we can see we have this animated gradient here for this icon. It's a really fun effect and can really make for an interesting website. So you can do the same with text, so I'll repeat that same process for text. So I'll go into I'll go into Adobe Illustrator, and I'll just create a new artboard, File, New. I'll click Create, and then I'll just write some text. So I'll select the text tool here to the left, and I'll click and I'll say Muse for you. And then I'll highlight the text, and I'll just change the text here to, we'll do Roboto Medium. That's a good one. Okay, and then I want to make this a bit larger, so I'm going to set the font size to about 80. I think that'll work there. And because it goes off the artboard, I'm going to go to Object, and for artboards right down here, I'm going to say Fit to Artwork Bounds, just like that. And for this, I want to click on the text, and I also want to right click and then click on Create Outlines, just like that. And then I'll center this here with the Align tool, center, horizontally center and vertically center. Okay, and then I want to create a rectangle in the background, so I'll set it to white. This rectangle in the background depends on the background of your website. So if the background of your website was kind of black or any other color, this rectangle in the background would want to be that same color. For now it's white, so I just made the rectangle white. I'll right click, arrange, and send to back. So this rectangle has to be behind the text. So just like that, we've created the outlines for the text, we've created the background. I'll select Command A to select all, and then here I can go to Object, Compound Path, and then click on Make, or select Command 8. And just like that, we have transparent text with this background. So I'll go to File, Export, Export As, and I'll click here, I'll say SVG, and we'll select Use Artboards, and here I'll say Text1 for the name, and enter. And then here are the options I have set, and I'll click OK. All right, so I'll go back into Muse, and for this I can just copy, or actually the first thing I'll do is bring in that text. So I'll go into the Finder, I'll select the text, click, hold, and drag, and place it right in there. So this text, if I go into the width and height, is 560 by 90. I can make it larger, which I think I will. So I'll make it something like that, and we'll center it. So now this text is 796 by 128. So we want to create a rectangle that's 796 pixels in width and 128 pixels in height. So let me just copy this square here. So I'll hit Command C to copy and Command V to paste. And let me place this back over here. And then here, I'll set it to 796. So let me unconstrain it here. So I'll say 796 by 128. I believe that's what it was. Yep, 796 by 128. So I'll move this down and I'll set this rectangle here in the back, and I'll place this SVG. So I'll right click, arrange, bring to front, and I'll set it over that rectangle, and I'll bring this here. All right, just like that. So I'll go to File, Preview Page in Browser, and then we have that gradient text and that gradient icon. So that's it. So I might do it one more time for review, and I'll just do it fairly quick. I know there was a few steps. First, we added the graphic styler, we added the animated gradient, and then we created the transparent text and icons in Illustrator. So let's do one more in Illustrator. So I'll just go to Adobe Illustrator. I'll go to File, New, click on Create, and I'll go to the text option to the left, click there, delete that text. Here I'll type in stroke gap icons right there. I'll go to the glyphs panel and I'll select this play button here. So I'll double click, and there we have it. I'll resize it to about 480. So I'll go to the transform option up here and I'll say 480, just like that. I'll center it in the vertically center and horizontally center, and I'll right click, create outlines. Let me zoom out here. I'll create a rectangle, a white rectangle, and just like that. And I'll just drag it over the artboard, arrange, send to back, and I'll select both. I'll hit Command A to select both, or select all of them, and then I'll hold down Command 8, or you can go to Object, Compound Path, and Make, and then I'll go to File, Export, Export As, use artboards, and I'll say SVG. I'll call this icon 2, export, and OK. And I'll just copy these right here, and I'll just delete this one, that icon there. So we just have that rectangle, and I'll place it here, go into my Finder, and select icon 2. Okay, I'll resize it to 300 by 300, and place over the square there. Okay, then I'll just move these like so. So I'll preview, and just like that, we have the animated gradients. Looks good. All right, so if we did have a different color to the background, let's say I had a darker background like that, you just would want to make the rectangle. So let me go, the hex is here, so I'm going to copy this hex color, or this hex code, go into Adobe Illustrator. Yeah, so I'll just click on the rectangle here, and here in the color I'll double click, and for the hex I'll just paste in that hex color. So now we have this darker background to this rectangle here. So again, I'll File, Export, Export As, artboard, say SVG, and I'll say icon 2 dark. Hit enter and click OK. Go back into Muse, and then here I'll delete this, and I'll bring icon 2 dark, and I'll say 300 by 300, and place it right in there. So I'll go to File, Preview Page in Browser. So we can see this is white, and this matches the website. So I'm going to go ahead and just hide these for now, so we can see that a bit better. And there it is. So that the icon looks like it's part of the background, which is great. All right, and that's all just by changing the color here within the background of the icon within Adobe Illustrator. And you can change that by going to the swatches here and changing the hex color there. All right, so I think that's basically it. That's all I wanted to cover with this. We used the graphic styler widget, and we used the gradient animator here. You can do this with any gradient, so it wouldn't have to be an animated gradient. Just as an example, I'll set it back to white, and I'll delete this here, and I'll bring in, and we'll delete this rectangle here as well. I'll just create another rectangle, and we'll say 300 by 300. I'll go to the fill option here at the top. I'll say gradient, and we'll just create a gradient here, just like that. And there we go. So we have a gradient to this element here. So I'll go into my Finder, I'll bring in an icon and place that in there. Okay, and there we have it. So you can actually see it before previewing how it will look, just like so. All right, and I'll paste that in there. I'll preview in the browser. So there we have an icon that has a gradient to it. So that's basically it. The last thing I'll show is how to use that icon set in Adobe Muse. So I'll go back into my Finder. I'll go back into the stroke gap icons web font. I'll double click, and here we have the fonts folder. So we've already installed the font onto the computer, so that's the first step. The next step is to go to File, and then Add Remove Web Fonts. And then here we have a few tabs. We have Typekit, Edge Web Fonts, and Self-Hosted Fonts. You want to click on Self-Hosted and then click on Add Fonts. Then this dialog will appear where it says drag and drop a .woff, a .eot, and a .svg. So I'll go back into my Finder and I'll select the .woff, .eot, and .svg. You can hold Command to select multiple files, and then I'll click, hold, and drag and place that right in there. And then here we have them. It says by clicking continue, I affirm I've properly licensed the above fonts for website use. Just click there and click continue. And then we'll notice it should be down here, stroke gap icons regular has a check mark, and that means it has been successfully installed. So I'll click OK. Then I'll go to the text tool here in Adobe Muse, and I'll create some text. Then I'll go into the font option here to select the web font. I'll click the drop down. I'll type in stroke, and here we have the stroke gap icons. So if I type, it's just text. So we need to go to the glyphs panel. So I have the glyphs panel right over here. And if you don't see the glyphs panel, you can go to Window and click on glyphs right here. So here I have my glyphs panel, and I can select any web font just like that. So I've selected the thumbs up, and I can resize it just like text. So I can say something like 60 or maybe even larger. So I'll say 72. I can change the color, and just like that, I can use these fonts like text in Adobe Muse. All right. So there we go. So there you can use that stroke gap icons found at graphicburger.com. You can use it right on your Adobe Muse website, and they have just really nice fonts, or excuse me, really nice icons here that you can use for your website. So that's it for this tutorial. I did cover quite a bit of information. We created gradient text, we created gradient icons. Oh, the last thing I'll show too is the particles.js widget. So there is quite a bit that I'm covering here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll just delete this one here for now, and I'm going to make the background a little bit darker. So I'm going to say here, just like that, and we'll delete that, and let's just bring in this one here, just like that. So I'm going to go to my library panel here to the right. I'm going to type in particles.js, and I'm going to bring in the particles.js widget full screen. So here I'm going to click, hold, and drag right in there, place it here to the left, and I'll open the widget options. Here I'll click on particles, and if you notice here we have particle color 1 through 5. So you can now select 5 different colors for the particles, and it doesn't just have to be one color, and you don't have to add multiple widgets to have different colors. So you can add 5 different colors here, and if you did want them all the same color, just set all the colors here to the same. So here I'll preview, file, preview page, and browser, and just like that we have the particles.js with different colors. Very simple. Just change the colors there, and you have multiple particles. All right, looks good. So that's it for this tutorial. We did cover quite a bit: the transparent icons, transparent text, and the gradient animator with the graphic styler widget, and the particles.js widget. I could customize the particles a bit more to kind of match the website, but you can go ahead and kind of work with the widget and get the styling how you'd like. So that's it for this video tutorial. To get access to the widgets used in this tutorial, you can simply go to musefreeshop.com, and here you can click on subscribe now, and here you can click subscribe now to get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year. Or if you'd like to subscribe with PayPal, you can click here and subscribe with PayPal. The graphic styler widget is right here. Here you can click add to cart to purchase individually, or again you can click subscribe to get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year, as well as subscribe with PayPal here if you'd like to subscribe with PayPal. Here are the widget options, the features included, the video on how to use the graphic styler, and the community section as well. And also the particles.js widget is right down here as well. Right here, here's the particles.js widget. So that's it for this video tutorial. I'll just go back here to the top. Again, I do this to help you build awesome websites without code. If you like this video tutorial, you can subscribe below. Also in the show more section below are links to other resources and links to museforyoushop.com. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Thank you.